1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
There we go. The anchor is overboard, and we are on our way as Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
Oh, it is. It's just a trifecta of a night for me for podcasting.
Yeah, it is.
It
Jamie's
is
been going hard tonight.
Yeah,
it's the third show today, huh?
Yeah, it's great, man. We had
awesome.
People listen whenever, wherever, however to the podcast, but it's March the 3rd, which is Bottled and Bond Day. Whiskey,
sure what that means.
Whiskey bottled in bond. There's several things a whiskey has to be bottled in bond.
Oh, okay.
It has to be 100 proof, done by one distiller in one distilling season, and
today's
in a barrel in a federally taxed thing. So it's bottled in bond. It's just a quality standard, and it's Bottled in Bond Day. So Matt and I were
for the Man Cave Happy Hour.
Bottled and bonding it.
It's like a holiday. It's like an event.
And then we did Animal Talk, and we had from the Tiger King, Joe Exotic Tiger King. We had Carol Baskins on the show talking about she's in Washington D.C. working with an action group trying to pass legislation to keep big cats out of people's bathtubs and stuff, So it's been I've been running hard all day,
cool.
but now we're here for Detroit City of Champions, and we're gonna talk about Gar Wood. We're talking about
Gar Wood.
These next two episodes, Gar Wood and more about Chris Kraft.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot to do with Chris Smith, Chris Kraft for the next, especially the next episode.
And this one, we're talking about Miss America 1 still.
Yeah, well, with this episode, for last episode we left off on Gar Wood. We introduced Gar Wood, and we talked about his back-to-back Gold Cup victories in 1917 and 18. So the 1917 race brought the Gold Cup to Detroit, and as we know about the races. Whenever you won in one city, so if you took you challenged the previous winner in their home waters,
and
then when you won, you brought the cup back to you, and then you defended your home waters against the next challenger.
Right.
So 1917, Garwood wins his first Gold Cup. Trophy comes back to Detroit, and now they're racing on Detroit waters for 1918. And so Garwood wins the second. So now the Gold Cup is won the second one. So and so this is, World War I is raging in Europe at this moment. I believe Garwood, I don't have the exact age, but he was like in his 40s at this point, I think. So I think he was a little bit too old to have been drafted.
Right.
So, anyways, so now so this is where we begin for this show for episode 54.
Yeah.
Which is so World War I is now over. And so, World War I ended in 1918. So post World War I. So as we already talked about on a previous show, one of the big innovations that Garwood had was that he was using airplane. He used the airplane engine in his boat.
Yeah.
And the Gold Cup races, he used this Curtiss airplane engine. And the reason he used Curtiss airplane engine was because the Curtiss engine was discontinued. They didn't use it. The U.S. government didn't pick
up the contract
for the
planes.
Exactly. So that's what allowed him to use that particular engine. Because they didn't have any, so they didn't need it for the military.
Sure. Yeah.
So now that the war is over, it's all gloves are off. So now he can use any engine he wants. And so what's really cool is he bought because
they lighter and bigger.
Exactly. The airplane engines had more power and they were lighter than the automobile engines. Yeah. So Garwood wanted to experiment. And the way I like to look at Garwood versus Chris Smith, like we've talked a lot about Chris Smith, was that Chris Smith was the boat builder.
Okay.
And he was, he installed engines and all that stuff, of course. But Garwood was really a fantastic engineer, and that was really his forte. And bringing Chris Smith allowed, I think, two sort of geniuses, which was Garwood with like engine design and engineering, to go with somebody who was clearly a master boat builder. Yeah. And I think that's why Garwood brought Chris Smith in, which was like, Chris Smith had already won 2 Gold Cups in previous boats that he'd built. And so he's like, well, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to pick his brain clean for boat design and for engines. So anyways, so immediately after World War I, Gar Wood goes out and buys in the Speedboat Kings. They talk about an entire rail car full of engines.
Oh, wow.
of surplus airplane engines
because the war ends and
because the war's over.
They don't need that mass production.
No, so there's surplus airplane engines, and I've got it actually written down in the book here. So he had nearly 1,000 surplus engines.
Holy crap!
From the war, 600 Fiat engine, Fiats, they call the car, which were Italian.
Yeah.
200 Mercedes, which of course are German.
Yeah.
100 Mercedes. So 100 Benz. So there was, Mercedes and Benz are two different companies. So you had 200 Mercedes engines, 100 Benz engines, both of course are German, and 100 Liberties, which are American. And also another 50 engines called Beardmans, which were English. And so he's got like all these engines, right? And just experiment with and see which ones are the best ones that work in that. And so
probably got them super cheap.
Yeah,
Army,
but still,
Navy,
you're buying 1,000 engines. It's still, but how cheap can it be when you're buying 1,000 engines? It's a ton.
But he had all that hoist money.
Well, true. That's what I'm saying. He was super rich to be able to do all this, and he was incredibly committed because 1,000 engines, and these are airplane engines. Like you're bringing them in. Like imagine just the project of bringing these engines in. Where are you going to put them?
Right.
Like you got 1,000 engines. Yeah. So anyways, and so alongside, Jace, there's a guy named Jay Smith was Chris Smith's son, and he actually was like for a time Garwood's mechanic when they were driving, because you always had a driver and then you had a mechanic.
Yeah. And
so Jay Smith started. So Garwood, with all these new engines, Garwood started a new company called Detroit Marine Aero Engine Company with Jay Smith. And so I'm not sure what the exact practicality of the business was, but as far as making money, but at the very least, it was used to process all these engines and to research them and develop them. But like, that's how committed he was to this boat design, was 1,000 engines. Like, now we're going to really get our, why do you need 600 Fiat engines? You know what I mean? Like, do you really need 600? Like, you can't just get 5, study them.
But if they're boring it out and they screw it up, it's like,
exactly.
There's no stress. Exactly. They could be as experimental as they want.
Exactly. But I'm saying, like, he's like, no, we need 600 of them. Like, we really want to go to town on the Fiats, like just in case,
Yeah.
So anyways, with these new engines, with these developed, so Garwood wins 1919. He wins his third Gold Cup, which is with the Miss Detroit 3. So he reused. So 1918, they had the Miss Detroit 3. They brought it back for 1919 and won the third Gold Cup. And then in 1920, they win the fourth Gold Cup in the Miss Detroit 4.
Okay.
And so with all these Gold Cup victories piling up, Garwood now he's clearly the most dominant racer in America.
Yeah.
So now he wants to take it to the next level. And of course, the next level is the Harmsworth.
Hey.
And so World War I is over. Nobody had challenged for the Harmsworth since 1912, when as we already talked about, Sir E. Mackey. His name is Sir E. Mackey Edgar, with the Maple Leaf 4, had won it in 1912 and 1913. His boat was the Miss America 4. So those were the last two Harmsworth races prior to World War I, and they'd not raced since. And so by Garwood challenging Mackey Edgar for the trophy, so now Garwood's got to go to England to win this trophy. So he does. And so, but before he does that, of course, the rules of the Harmsworth stipulated that it had to be all American parts. Each country had to have their own, had to have the parts for the boat had to be native to the country. You couldn't use, if in this case, the best carburetors and they call them magnetos in the world were Bosch, which were German. And so Garwood couldn't use those anymore. He had to, it's according to the book, it took 2 months, several months of testing all these different carburetors and magnetos just to find an American product that would work instead of Bosch. And then instead of he'd been using Honduran mahogany, which was part of the British territories. And so he could no longer use this particular type of wood. He had to go with Philippine mahogany because the Philippines were, under U.S. Jurisdiction. So he had to use Philippine mahogany. And then as far as the engine goes, so where do we know any engine making companies in Detroit?
I don't know.
Packard.
Yeah,
Packard Liberty engine. He goes with he installs So he comes out with 2 new boats, the Miss Detroit 5 and the Miss America 1. And so he's installing, instead of just a single engine, where he's doing dual 500 horsepower Liberty engines in these things, Packard Liberty engines, which were they use them for American World War I airplanes, which are going in these boats. So anyways, so we got a quote to read about sort of leading up to the race and that, and just as which is kind of cool, sort of setup. So he had 2 boats, as I mentioned, and for the 1920 race, there would end up being 9 English boats, 3 American, 2 French, and 1 Spanish. They were all part of this race for this 1920 Harmsworth race in England. And so of the 3 American, of course, Garwood had 2 of them. So the question becomes, why does Garwood have 2 boats? And so this is the quote I'm going to read from. This is from J. Lee Barrett, Speedboat Kings. So the question J. Lee Barrett begins with is, why 2 boats? One of his men asked him one day. Wood said, we may get a calm. He meant that the Solent between the Isle of Wight and the English mainland, where the English hold their Harmsworth races, is eternally rough. But someday, Wood said, someday they'll get a calm. It may be the day of the race. So Wood built 2 boats, one for rough weather, the Miss Detroit 5, and one for a calm, the Miss America 1. His Miss America 1 was only 26 feet long, the same length as Blackton's Baby Reliance 2, built in 1912. But where Blackton's boat was powered with a single Stirling engine of 150 horsepower, Wood's boat was powered with 2 Liberties of 500 horsepower each. In other words, Wood was carrying 850 more horsepower than Blackton in a hull of the same size.
Oh my!
The chances were, however, that Wood was wasting his money and his time building a small boat. Blackton and Chris Smith had learned an expensive lesson in 1912 when the tiny 20-foot Baby Reliance 2 could not negotiate the rough water of Huntington Bay, New York. And the English Solent is much rougher than the Huntington Bay course. Chris Smith told Wood about this, but Wood insisted on a small boat. It was a good thing he did. On the day of the race, August 10th, 1920, the Solent was like a sheet of glass. Harry G. Hawker, one of England's famous war aces and pilot of the Maple Leaf 6, told Wood the morning of the race, "Listen, old fellow," he said, "I've lived on this strip of water all my life, and never have I seen it as calm as it is today." Wood chuckled and said, "Well, you see, sir, I brought my lucky teddy bears with me." So he builds 2 boats, one for in case it's super heavy water, and the other one in case it's calm. And the Miss America 1 was built for the calm. When they were saying, and that's what they mentioned in this, how we already talked about the Chris Smith's boat, the Baby Reliance 2 that they entered in this Harmsworth prior to World War I, had been beaten to pieces because of these rough waters. And so so that's what's so cool is that Garwood. So the day that they bring out the Miss America 1, which is a smaller boat, it's like totally built for this, for this calm weather. And so, so that's where we're at. So I'm getting into the race. You look like you were about to say something.
No.
So this, this is where we're going with this episode. I want to sort of finish up, and I got a great quote to read about the race itself.
All right. So building this Miss America 1, never even sure it's going to hit the water.
Exactly.
Lucky day.
That's what they're saying. Is like he's like, you wasted your money because this water is crazy rough, and that boat's going to get torn to pieces when it's all choppy. And that's why the guy said, "I've lived on this water my whole life, and he's never seen it, not even for a day." And this is the day. It's a calm.
Game on, man.
He's got his lucky teddy bear. So we've been talking about those teddy bears, and all of a sudden, Garwood's attributing it to going, "I wasn't worried. That's why I did it."
Yeah. So I love it. It just and we got the picture of the boat, the America 1 running. Is that probably in that race? Because how long did he use the America 1?
Not long. We're gonna the next episode. We're gonna be talking about the Miss America 2.
Yeah,
so it's not long. He doesn't use it for long. Probably just this race. I think he used it. He may have used it in the. I don't know if because these were 2 new boats he built, so we didn't use it in the. In the Gold Cup. So
this might have been one and done.
Yeah. So anyways,
wow.
So getting to the race. So prior to this, to his first Harmsworth Trophy race, So Lloyd's of London, which is, I believe, a bank in London, an insurance company in London. So they offered Garwood $15,000 insurance policy on Wood's boats for only $300, right? So Garwood's like, that's a fantastic deal, because these boats are like one little thing goes wrong, these boats get shredded.
Catch some wind, see.
So he's like, why are they offering me a $15,000 policy for only $300 for like basically one race? And so he was like, that's a steal for whatever reason. So there's only one condition that he took this, that he got this, that they insured his boat, was that there's these tin strips that he had to put over his ignition system to, I guess, prevent sparks from like coming out of the ignition and setting this wood boat on fire. And so he's like, that's such a small thing. Like, I might as well just do it. What's the problem? Right. So keep that in mind as I read the quote about the race itself, because this race is tremendous, in those tin strips are a really important component of the. So this is the story of the 1920. This is as told again by J. Lee Barrett and Speedboat Kings. Mm-hmm. This is a book with, if this is your first time listening, this is an $800 book. So just this quote alone, if we broke it up by the page, is probably worth like $20. So you're getting it for free.
There you go.
So anyways, it is worth it. I think it's worth every dollar if that's what you had to pay for it. So anyways, so here it is. So this is that first that 1920 Harmsworth race. Flag draped yachts of the English Admiralty rode at anchor. Among them were 2 yachts formerly owned by the German Kaiser, but which had been seized by the English during the World War. In one of these yachts, the German royal family planned to cruise the world after defeating the Allies. The English had 3 boats ready for the start. Sunbeam, the Sunbeam des Pujols, built in the Sunbeam plant of Wolverhampton, England, and piloted by Sir Algernon Lee Guinness. The Maple Leaf 5, owned by Sir Mackie Edgar and powered with the 4 Sunbeam engines, 2 amidships and 2 astern, and the Maple Leaf 6, powered with 2 Rolls-Royce engines placed amidships and piloted by Harry G. Hawker, one of England's famous war aces. A few minutes before the starting gun, the 3 English boats were out on the course, getting ready. George Wood, which was Gar's brother, was out there too, with the Miss Detroit 5. Bernard Smith and Clarence Miracle, his mechanics, beside him. Wood himself, Jay Smith, and Phil Wood, Gar's brother, were in the boathouse strapping up their life belts. They had taken the tarpaulin off Miss America 1 and filled the tanks with American gasoline. Wood was eyeing his watch, timing his start. The cannon on the judge's barge boomed the 5-minute signal. Wood and his mechanics stepped into the cockpit. Smith touched the starting button, warmed the engines, jerked the throttle down. The Miss America 1 rose on her step, leveled off, and charged ahead. Wood, handling the wheel, streaked up the mainland side of the course, going west. His boat planed perfectly, the bright Philippine mahogany gleaming like fire beneath the English sun, the white spray spreading like wings poised for the dive. He cut a wide arc of his boat straight through the towers of Queen Victoria's palace, rising above the treetops. He could see the last disc hanging above the judge's stand, but his watch told him the time was crowding. He signaled Jay Smith for more throttle. The 2 Liberties in his boat answered with 1,000 horsepower. Wood was fearful that he would not be able to hear that starting gun over the roar of his 2 Liberties. But when he put his Miss America across the line, the blast of the 6-inch cannon on a battleship above his head almost pitched him out of his boat. The English boats went across the line first. The 2 American boats were last. Miss Detroit 5 developing carburetor trouble almost immediately. It was the first time Wood had ever raced any of his boats in salt water, and it was the salt water that gave him the most of his trouble. The tin strips he had placed over his ignition system shut out most of the air and enriched the carburetor mixture. As a result, the engines in the Miss Detroit 5 overheated and blew out the porcelain on a dozen spark plugs. Oh. The boat limped along far behind the field. Wood himself in Miss America 1 was having a good deal of trouble. It was only his fast turning at the buoys that kept him up there near the lead. He could turn much faster than any of the English boats because of his bow rudder. Before the race, when the English engineers examined the American boats, they ridiculed the bow rudder on Wood's boats. You can't turn a boat with a rudder way up there, they said. But now, with Wood's spark plugs fouling, his bow rudder was keeping him in the race. The English would sweep far wide of the buoys, and before they could get their boats back on the stretch again, Wood was taking the turns with all his power, trimming the buoys. The following year, the English would put a bow rudder on their boat.
Mm.
On the fourth lap, Wood took the lead with his Miss America 1. The English did not believe Wood could stay there in the lead. His engines were smoking, and in his wake was an immense black ring around the entire rim of the course. But Wood did stay there, averaging 62 miles an hour and winning the heat far, far ahead of any English boat. The dense smoke screen sent out by Miss America almost obliterated the course for the English contenders. After Wood had gone over the finish line, he headed his boat back towards the judges' stand. For the first time, he noticed that the faces of his mechanics and the American flag at the stern of his boat were as black as coal. When they neared the judges' stand, Sir Mackie Egger, owner of the Maple Leafs, yelled out, "What kind of fuel are you burning in that boat?" Wood answered, "We're using soft coal today, but watch out for tomorrow. We're going to use gasoline." That night, Wood and his men ripped off the tin strips from the ignition system. "That's our trouble," Wood said when they pulled into the boat well, and it was. In the next race, both American boats completely outclassed the English. It was a race chiefly between Wood's two boats, the Miss America 1 winning.
Nice.
So that was the first Harmsworth. So you can see this, so they put these strips on this carburetor and
to avoid sparks, and they almost.
But you can imagine this smoke trail. The boat is doing these laps, and there's this immense smoke trail. Just the whole course, they're going, "Good Lord, that thing!"
Is on fire?
Yeah. And so I was trying to find a picture of the bow rudder. I've seen it somewhere else before, but it was a rudder on the front of the boat that allowed him to steer, to steer in the water easier. Because when the boat's up above the water on a plane, it takes a wide arc to steer this thing. But if he's got a bow rudder on it, then it makes it easier for him to steer. And that's when they said that's what kept him in the race, was his ability to take these corners so sharply while all these other boats had to swing way out. So it's just, it's a great story because, it wasn't just like, they just did their thing and, that's all there was to it.
That was treacherous.
Yeah. So, yes, but I like, again, as we've talked about before, I just love the way J. Lee Barrett writes because, he's just like the shining mahogany is appeared as white as fire.
Oh yeah, it's just classic. So but day 2, so he was able. It was still calm the next day. He was able to get this boat back out there.
Yeah, he got it back out, and he said both boats. It was just a race between Garwood's two boats, and Garwood, the Miss America, took one.
Luckily, it didn't pick up. It would have trashed that little fella.
Well, the Miss Detroit 5 would have carried it then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he had the rugged boat too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, in either case, so Miss America 1 wins the Harmsworth for Gar Wood. So that's his first Harmsworth victory.
And so the deal with the Harmsworth is you bring that back to your town, and then the next race.
The race is now from now on, the next challenge for the next Harmsworth is going to be in Detroit, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. But I wanted to mention too, I was looking for a picture of the Miss Detroit 4 or 5, whatever. I was looking for a picture of Miss America 1. The picture we got on the screen is pretty decent. But that came off of a really small picture I had. It's actually surprisingly, it was kind of tough to find on the internet. I didn't find anything really.
The Miss Detroit one?
The Miss America 1, the photo we had for the show.
Where they have it?
But when I was looking though, I realized there was a really cool video that I feel like I saw it a while ago, but it's been so long. But it's really worth checking out. It's an 8-minute video and it's on YouTube. And if anyone wants to see it, it's called the Garwood. It just says it's called Garwood Story.
All right.
And the guy whose channel it is, he has a small channel. His name is T Bowers, and it's T with a space and then BOWERS. He's only got 34 subscribers. But the video is called, it just says Garwood Story. Yeah. And it's 8 minutes long, and it looks like it was done like sort of in the maybe the late 30s.
Okay.
Sort of late 30s but it's just, I mean, it's, if you want just spoiler, there's a couple spoiler alerts for what we're talking about in the show. They show quite a bit ahead of what we're talking, where we're at this moment of the show. But it's, man, if you want to see what these boats look like, it's cool. They show the Miss America 1 on there. Yeah. They show several different Miss Americas. And what's cool is that it's such a short video, that when you see the Miss America 1 in contrast to what we'll eventually get to the Miss America 10, you hear the engines in this video. They got full sound, and these things are just monstrous, man. I've heard them before. I've seen videos where they fire up the engines, but it's just such a cool video because you see they're sitting at the very back of this boat, and the front of this boat looks like a freighter or something. It's just all engine.
Oh my god!
It's really cool. If you just want a little 8-minute short little like a short little sort of introduction about Gar Wood, it's really worth the watch. I mean, it's really worth your 8 minutes of time. And again, I'll just tell you, it just says Garwood Story, and it's by the channel is T Bowers.
Pioneer.
Oh,
In 1912.
You looking it up?
Oh, I was trying to bring it up.
It's cool.
And I still have the overlay on there. So there's the video playing. If you're watching along, it's they're showing the building of the boats and.
Well, yeah, the very beginning shows some of the building. Maybe watch it for about 10 seconds here because you'll hear the engines in the very beginning.
I muted the sound. I don't want to
throw the sound on there just so we can hear just the first engine.
This chapter, the Silver Fox. The story of Gar Wood.
He'll talk about the Miss. We'll listen to it for the Miss America 1. Listen, he'll even talk about it right here.
1931. The Silver Fox of speedboat racing is 50 years old.
Yeah, we're getting a little feedback on that, the way it's set up.
Well, it's a cool show.
Cool.
Watch, it's a little 8-minute video. It's really worth the watch because especially when you see these things roar, man. They've got some great. Like I say, you see the development in 8 minutes. You see from Miss America 1 to 10,
right?
And it's there's of course it's only 8 minutes long, so there's a ton of details that they don't mention on it, but we'll get to all the details on it.
That's why we're here to fill in all those important
because they skip
pieces
through a ton of
through.
incredible stuff. The story itself is just so cool.
Yeah,
but so anyways,
all right, we're gonna go in. We're gonna hit the next episode and talk about Chris Craft and. All the Chris Craft through the 20s, the 30s.
We're gonna
50s and 60s.
We're gonna talk about the next episode. We're gonna talk about the second Harmsworth race, and we're gonna see Chris Smith and Gar Wood go their separate ways.
Okay.
So this is the two of them are gonna split up, and there's a whole reason why, and we're gonna talk about all Chris Smith and that.
All right. Well, if you want to catch that, make sure you subscribe. Collect, follow, whatever it is.
Hit the like button and let one person know. If all of our subscribers share it and tell one person to watch,
we would have 4 people watching.
don't sell us short, Jamie. We got at least 8 people.
No, we do. There's a fair amount, but appreciate everybody. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and then share with some friends. And we'll do it again. It's Detroit, the City of Champions podcast. Everybody out of the pool.